You cannot rebuild a brand that no longer exists. You cannot take a name that disappeared from relevance and convince professionals to trust it again. And you cannot erase a corporate failure and turn it into a competitive advantage. DeWalt did all three. This is the story of a company that didn't just decline, it lost its identity completely. A brand that became so diluted it stopped meaning anything. And then instead of fixing it, its parent company did something far more radical. It killed it, and brought it back as something entirely different. In 1924, Raymond DeWalt, a self-taught inventor and machinist, develops a machine that changes woodworking forever, the radial arm saw. Before this, cutting wood accurately required time, skill, and multiple setups. Precision was slow, repetition was difficult. DeWalt's machine changes that. A single operator can now make fast, consistent, accurate cuts across multiple angles. It reduces labor. It increases output. It standardizes precision. This is not just a tool. It is a productivity system. DeWalt builds his company around this idea. Tools that improve how work gets done, not just tools that perform tasks. His machines are heavy, industrial, and built for professionals who rely on them daily. Reliability is not a feature. It is the requirement. Through the 1930s and 1940s, DeWalt Products Company grows steadily. Its machines appear in factories, workshops, and construction environments across the United States. The brand becomes associated with durability and professional-grade performance. But the company's future changes in 1949. DeWalt is acquired by American Machine and Foundry, AMF, a conglomerate with a portfolio that spans far beyond tools. Bowling equipment, agricultural machinery, even defense-related manufacturing. Tools are just one division among many. At first, nothing breaks. Production continues, sales continue, but something more subtle begins to shift. The company is no longer driven by an inventor. It is managed by a corporation. AMF does not think in terms of tools. It thinks in terms of assets, margins, and portfolio balance. The focus moves away from product innovation and toward operational efficiency. And while that shift does not immediately damage DeWalt, it slows it down. Meanwhile, the industry is changing. Through the 1950s and into the 1960s, a new category begins to take shape. Portable power tools, electric drills, handheld saws, grinders, tools that can move with the worker instead of requiring the worker to come to them. Construction sites are becoming more dynamic. Jobs are faster. Flexibility matters more than fixed precision. The future is no longer in stationary machines. DeWalt does not lead this transition. It remains focused on what it knows. Industrial woodworking equipment. Reliable, proven, but increasingly limited in scope. The company is still building excellent machines, but it is building them for a world that is slowly disappearing. Competitors are not making the same mistake. Black & Decker begins investing aggressively in portable electric tools. Makita emerges as a serious competitor in professional-grade equipment. Bosch expands its engineering footprint into power tools. The industry is moving forward. DeWalt is holding its ground, and in business, standing still is rarely neutral. It is often the same as falling behind. In 1960, Black & Decker acquires DeWalt from AMF. At the time, Black & Decker is already dominant, but in a different market. Its tools are everywhere, but they are associated with consumers, homeowners, hobbyists, garage use. Affordable, accessible, but not necessarily professional grade. And that distinction matters. Professional tradespeople do not choose tools the same way consumers do. They do not optimize for price. They optimize for reliability, durability, and trust. A tool failure on a job site is not an inconvenience. It is lost time, lost money, and damaged reputation. Black & Decker has scale, distribution, and brand recognition, but it does not have credibility with professionals. DeWalt does. At least, it used to. Instead of preserving that distinction, Black & Decker begins blending the two identities. Products overlap. Branding becomes inconsistent. The separation between consumer and professional tools weakens. The logic seems reasonable. One company, shared resources, broader reach, but the result is confusion. When a brand tries to serve everyone, it often ends up serving no one clearly. Professionals no longer see DeWalt as purely professional. Consumers do not fully understand what DeWalt represents. The brand loses clarity, and without clarity, it loses power. Through the 1970s and 1980s, DeWalt fades, not through a dramatic collapse, but through slow erosion. It is still present, still producing tools, still part of the industry, but it no longer defines anything. It does not lead. It does not stand apart. By 1989, DeWalt as a meaningful brand is effectively gone. The name exists, the identity does not. Black & Decker faces a strategic problem that product improvements alone cannot solve. Professionals do not trust the brand, and trust once lost is difficult to rebuild. Competitors are taking advantage. Makita gains strong traction with cordless tools. Milwaukee builds deep loyalty among industrial users. Bosch continues expanding globally. Black & Decker has scale, it has distribution, it has manufacturing, but it does not have positioning. So it makes a decision that most companies avoid. Instead of fixing the brand, it separates it. In 1992, Black & Decker relaunches DeWalt, not as a continuation, but as a new identity. The strategy is deliberate. Black & Decker will remain the consumer brand. DeWalt will become the professional brand. The two will not overlap. They will not compete for the same customer. They will not blur into each other again. This is not a product change. It is a positioning reset. The relaunch is aggressive. DeWalt tools adopt a bold black and yellow color scheme. The branding is consistent across every product. The messaging is clear, built for professionals. But branding alone does not convince professionals. Performance does. DeWalt introduces a full line of cordless tools designed specifically for job site use. Drills, impact drivers, saws, all built around a unified battery platform. This is where the strategy becomes powerful. Instead of selling individual tools, DeWalt builds a system. One battery works across multiple tools. One charger supports the entire lineup. A contractor can invest once and expand without replacing everything. This reduces friction. It increases efficiency. It creates dependency. The more tools a user owns within the system, the harder it becomes to leave it. This is not accidental. It is ecosystem design. At the time, competitors are fragmented. Different tools use different batteries. Compatibility is inconsistent. Users manage multiple chargers, multiple platforms, multiple limitations. DeWalt simplifies the entire experience, and professionals notice. A contractor on a job site does not care about marketing language. He cares about whether the tool works, whether the battery lasts, and whether the system makes his day easier. DeWalt delivers on all three. Adoption accelerates. By the mid-1990s, DeWalt becomes one of the fastest growing power tool brands in North America. But growth alone is not the goal. Control is. Through the late 1990s and into the 2000s, DeWalt expands its product ecosystem aggressively. More tools, more categories, more compatibility. The goal is not just to sell more products, it is to become the default system. Once a contractor builds a DeWalt kit, drills, saws, batteries, chargers, switching to another brand becomes expensive and disruptive. This is lock-in, but not through restriction, through convenience. At the same time, DeWalt invests heavily in distribution. Unlike Hilti, which uses direct sales and controlled channels, DeWalt goes wide. Home Depot, Lowe's, independent distributors, everywhere professionals shop. Visibility becomes an advantage. The tools are not hidden. They are present, consistent, and recognizable. A contractor walking into a store sees DeWalt immediately. The branding does the work before the product is even picked up. This is scale applied strategically. Through the 2000s, technology begins to shift again. Lithium-ion batteries replace older nickel-cadmium systems. They are lighter, they hold charge longer, they deliver consistent power, they recharge faster. DeWalt adopts lithium-ion early and integrates it into its existing ecosystem. The transition is not disruptive to users. It is an upgrade. This matters. A system that evolves without forcing the user to restart maintains loyalty. A system that requires constant replacement erodes it. DeWalt chooses continuity. Competitors respond in different ways. Some push into consumer markets and dilute their professional identity. Others focus narrowly and miss broader adoption. Some are acquired and restructured, losing consistency in the process. DeWalt stays aligned. Professional focus, system expansion, brand clarity. The brand that disappeared in 1989 now represents one of the most stable identities in the industry. By the 2010s, DeWalt is no longer rebuilding, it is leading. Revenue reaches into the billions, market share expands globally. The brand becomes a standard choice for new entrants into the trades. A new generation of electricians, carpenters, and contractors grows up with DeWalt as a baseline, not as a comeback story, but as the default. This is where the strategy compounds. DeWalt is no longer competing for attention. It is embedded in the workflow. In 2010, Black & Decker merges with Stanley Works to form Stanley Black & Decker, one of the largest tool companies in the world. The portfolio includes multiple brands across different segments, but the structure is clear. Black & Decker serves consumers, DeWalt serves professionals, Craftsman occupies a middle ground. The mistake of blending identities is not repeated. Each brand has a role. Each role is protected. DeWalt continues expanding its system. More tools, more battery platforms, more specialization. From construction to automotive to industrial applications, the ecosystem grows. The strategy remains consistent. Own the professional user. Today, DeWalt generates billions in annual revenue and operates in markets across the world. Its tools are used on construction sites, in workshops, and in industrial environments where reliability is non-negotiable. The brand is not just recognized, it is trusted. And that trust was not inherited, it was rebuilt. DeWalt's comeback was not a return to its origins. It did not revive the radial arm saw legacy. It did not reconnect with its original product line. It replaced it. The original company focused on stationary industrial machines. The modern company focuses on portable, integrated systems. The technology is different. The market is different. The users are different. The only thing that remained was the name. And even that name had to be redefined. This is the core insight. Brands are not products. They are not factories. They are not even companies. They are perceptions. And perceptions can be rebuilt if the strategy behind them is clear enough. DeWalt did not fix its past. It abandoned it. It separated markets. It built systems. It committed to a single audience and refused to dilute that focus again. The radial arm saw is gone. The industrial workshop identity is gone. The confusion of the 1980s is gone. What remains is something far more powerful. A brand that knows exactly who it is for. A system that keeps users inside it. A strategy that compounds over time instead of resetting. The tool brand that died did not come back. A new one was built on top of it. And that new one did not just survive. It became a $10 billion strategy. Where the previous story ends, with DeWalt established as a dominant professional brand, the next phase begins where most tool companies start to lose direction. Because building a brand is one challenge. Sustaining it, while competitors evolve, technology shifts, and customer expectations change, is a completely different problem. By the late 2010s, the power tool industry is no longer just about durability or performance. It becomes a technology race. Battery platforms are no longer just power sources. They are ecosystems, data systems, infrastructure. And this is where a new war begins. Milwaukee, under Tektronix Industries, begins aggressively expanding its M18 platform. Hundreds of tools, deep specialization, trade-specific solutions, not just drills and saws, but plumbing tools, electrical tools, niche equipment designed for very specific job site problems. Makita responds with its own expansion, pushing into dual battery systems and high-output cordless tools designed to replace corded equipment entirely. Bosch continues investing in engineering precision, particularly in Europe, maintaining a strong position in professional-grade tools with technical advantages. The industry shifts from who makes the best drill to who owns the entire workflow. And DeWalt is now competing in a different game. The question is no longer whether its tools are reliable. The question is whether its system is complete. DeWalt responds the same way it did in the 1990s. It expands the ecosystem. New battery platforms are introduced. 20V Max, FlexVolt, designed to bridge the gap between cordless convenience and corded power. FlexVolt in particular is a strategic move. It allows batteries to change voltage depending on the tool. The same battery can power smaller handheld tools or larger high-demand equipment. This reduces the need for separate systems. Again, the pattern repeats. Simplify the user experience. Increase dependency on the system. Make switching harder. But there is a deeper layer to this shift. The job site itself is changing. Construction is becoming more data-driven. Asset tracking, tool management, productivity monitoring, these are no longer abstract ideas. They are operational realities for large contractors, managing hundreds of tools across multiple sites. And DeWalt begins integrating into that layer. Tool tracking systems, connected batteries, digital platforms that allow companies to monitor usage, location, and performance. The tool is no longer just a tool, it becomes part of a network. This is where the industry begins to resemble something closer to software than hardware. And the companies that understand this transition gain an advantage. Because once tools become data points, the relationship with the customer changes again. It is no longer transactional. It becomes continuous. DeWalt is not the only company moving in this direction. Hilti built its entire model around lifecycle management and service. Milwaukee integrates digital features into its one key system. But DeWalt's advantage remains the same as it was in the 1990s. Scale. It does not need to be first. It needs to be everywhere. And that strategy continues to work. By the early 2020s, DeWalt is firmly positioned as one of the top professional tool brands globally. Its products are not niche. They are not specialized to the point of exclusion. They are widely adopted across multiple trades. Electricians use them, carpenters use them, general contractors use them, mechanics use them. This broad adoption creates a different kind of strength, not exclusivity. Standardization. When a brand becomes standard, it becomes the default choice for new entrants. Apprentices entering the trades often adopt what they see on job sites, and what they see repeatedly shapes their perception of what is normal. DeWalt benefits from this cycle. The brand reinforces itself through visibility. But this position is not without risk, because the same strategy that creates scale can also limit specialization. Milwaukee, for example, focuses heavily on trade-specific solutions. Tools designed for electricians that solve very specific problems. Tools designed for plumbers that eliminate entire steps and workflows. This creates deeper loyalty within specific trades. DeWalt, by contrast, operates more broadly. The trade-off is clear, breadth versus depth, and this is where competitive positioning becomes critical. DeWalt does not try to out-specialize every competitor in every niche. Instead, it maintains a balance, broad enough to dominate general use, but specialized enough to remain credible. It is a middle position, but not a weak one. It is a controlled position, because in a fragmented industry, the company that captures the largest shared space often captures the most volume. And volume combined with system lock-in becomes a powerful advantage. But perhaps the most important part of DeWalt's strategy is not what it builds, it is what it avoids. It avoids returning to the mistake of the 1980s. It does not blur its identity. It does not merge its professional and consumer lines. Stanley Black & Decker maintains strict segmentation across its brands. Black & Decker remains consumer-focused. Craftsman occupies a different tier. DeWalt stays professional. This clarity is not accidental. It is enforced. Because the company has already seen what happens when that line disappears. Confusion, and confusion destroys trust. The modern DeWalt is built on the opposite principle. Clarity builds trust, and trust builds revenue. The result is a brand that operates with consistency across decades. Not because the market has not changed, but because the core strategy has remained aligned. Professional focus, system integration, brand clarity, scale distribution. These are not temporary advantages. They are structural. And structural advantages compound. Today, DeWalt exists in a position that would have been impossible in 1989. Not because it recovered, but because it reset. The company that disappeared was not repaired. It was replaced. The new version learned from the failure of the old one. It understood that a brand is not just a name, it is a promise. And that promise must be clear, consistent, and aligned with the people it serves. DeWalt's promise is simple. Tools that work, systems that scale, a brand that professionals can rely on without thinking twice. And that last part matters more than anything else, because the strongest brands are not the ones people talk about. They are the ones people stop questioning. The contractor who reaches for a DeWalt drill at 6:30 in the morning is not thinking about strategy, branding, or market positioning. He is thinking about getting the job done. The brand has already done its work. It earned that trust long before that moment. And that is the final piece of the story. DeWalt did not win because it had the best tool. It won because it built a system that made the choice obvious. The brand that died in 1989 is gone. What replaced it is not a comeback story. It is a case study in how to rebuild identity, in how to separate markets, in how to turn a failure into a foundation, and in how to take a name that once meant something and make it mean something entirely new. That is not a revival. That is strategy, and that strategy built a $10 billion brand.